Sori.
That's Booby.
Colby and Chip and Ghosty. This is a Patreon pick.
Which group is this?
Is this the one? Yeah.
The Extreme Underground?
Yeah, the Extreme.
XU? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is the Extreme Underground. If you want in on some of the alliances, tickets at the doorway is $1
a month.
You can do more, which would obviously give you more power in your given alliance. But that's the way that we get bands that you've never heard of before. You will notice that one of the differences with our channel is that we are playing a lot of bands and songs that you've never heard of before, and that's due to the alliance picks. And yeah, they're not going to get as many views, and they're not going to get you shared on YouTube a lot. You know, there's easy ways to get your stuff.
You mean?
No, YouTube.
People share stuff on YouTube?
YouTube will page one you.
Oh, yeah,
you know, if you do something mega, you know. So there's definitely sacrifices, but it balances out in the sense that people get exposed to bands they've never heard of before. And
we get to see some stuff, too.
We get exposed to it, and then folks who've, you know, without this, a lot of these bands would never stand a chance of getting a hearing. So it works out for everybody. It's a brilliant idea. Whoever came up with it, they should give them a crown or medal or something. Patreon should pull that brother. Patreon ought to pull that brother aside and learn from his ways. Anyway. This is from that alliance, Extreme Underground Alliance. This is called Shadows Fed to Tyrants by Landmine Marathon. For timely topical political commentary, you can hit us up at Middle America with Vin and Sori.
And there was actually a fireside that I did like 2 nights ago. That's up on My Sori Life if you want to check that out.
Oh yeah, that's a Sori side, right?
Yeah.
What did you guys talk about?
Just different stuff, and then I had to keep going and check the lasagna because I was cooking, so I kept like bringing the computer with me. So like you tore through our apartment. I kept telling the kids, "Don't come in the thing, don't say any words," because I didn't want them to block my comments.
Right. Shout out to YouTube. Okay. So
ready?
All right, let's do it.
Go.
Whoa.
Yeah.
was having a very, very hard time tracking those lyrics. Okay, so this is Landmine Marathon. What does Trello say about that? This is actually chosen by Zonia.
Death metal.
They're a death metal band. Interesting. Well, it did kind of have a Zonia kind of like anarchist kind of feel. Felt a little bit anarchist to me. I thought that this was kind of like closer to hardcore. I wouldn't have considered them death metal, but what do I know? Sage knows all. The young are immortal, the old are all wise. Youth always lost on these bastards plaguing land and sea, tapping endlessly, better unborn than servitude backs on our latitude. I hope to outlive beauty and grace, left with only human waste discussing matters of our place. Cloaks and robes set ablaze, praying to stand, degrading a heartland, dollhouse, castles, lines, our eyes lost in our minds. Plastering each and every finger inside and out, building the stage for hollow plays, forgiving ourselves in one great epilogue. This is pathetic dialogue. I like the way that she's kind of rapping because there's really not a lot of commitment to rhyme scheme a lot of times on metal, especially like faster stuff. And she was really committing to rhyme, and obviously as somebody who appreciates hip-hop, I appreciate it. In phrases waiting for placement, reciting directions to a bleeding heartland, where masks are skin-sewn shadows fed to tyrants, the noise of drums beat down our existence to nothing. These bastards are forced to grin and bear it. We are all cursed with ease. This pathetic dialogue has turned into my monologue. I apologize for nothing. I like that attitude.
Yeah.
That's like that's like one of my favorite attitudes ever. Sovereign Descent is the name of the record. Came out in 2010. What do you think this is about?
I don't know. It was all over the place for me.
It seemed like...
I don't know.
Yeah, I was trying to locate it. You know, it's 2010. What was going on in 2010? I mean, we were full swinging in jihad. We've been in jihad for about almost 20 years now, so we were halfway into it. Into the jihad with the world. But the young are immoral, the old are all wise. Youth always lost on these bastards, plaguing land and sea, tapping endlessly, better unborn. So it just looks like the typical, you know, when you're young, you know, you're always wrong and you're always nasty, and it's the old who have the youth, but it's the old people that have been sending everybody off to war and fucking shit up. You know what I mean? So how can you say that we're the ones with the problem?
Immoral. I was thinking immortal.
No.
I was thinking how, you know, the young always think that they're not going to die. That's what okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love this line. I hope to outlive beauty and grace.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, okay.
Left with only human waste, discussing matters of our place. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a positive line here, because she's young, and she's saying she hopes to outlive beauty and grace, and left with only human waste.
I know, I was like, wait.
Discussing matters of our place, cloaks and robes set ablaze. So it seems like that's how she's characterizing older people. Older people are beyond beauty and grace, and now they're just stodgy and miserable. And, you know, they're in their little robes or whatever, but they're denigrating the youth. You know, it's the generational jihad that happens because older people ultimately think that they're right, and because they've seen it before, and then younger people think that they're right because it's a new world, and they think that the very reason that the old folks think they're wise and should be listened to is the very same reason that the young ones don't believe they should be listened to. Which is, the old folks are saying, hey, we've seen this before, you should listen to us. And the new folks are saying, yeah, but when it was like that with you, the world has changed. So your experience is outdated. So you're coming at me telling me X, Y, and Z thing, but you're outdated. You're an old person. What do you know?
I think in some cases
you don't even know how to measure your iPhone. Get out of here.
I think so. In some cases that's true, but then there are other cases where, you know, there are some themes in life that repeat themselves.
Right.
You know, life, death, love, hate, you know, all these different emotions that people feel. Like, those are repeated over and over and over. So, I mean... Right. I mean, yeah, my grandmother is not going to be able to help me if I have a problem with my iPhone, but she might be able to answer my questions if I'm talking about a marriage or having multiple kids. I mean, she had 7 kids, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, it's the silliness of youth. It's like, oh, you don't have an iPhone. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. But it's also silly of the older generation to not realize that, hey, your way of doing things may not necessarily be the way, you know. But which is why, you know, I'm at pretty much the end point of arguing with the kids. It's like, okay, well, now you figure it out on your own. Like, at some point as an older person, if you're part of the older generation, which is kind of funny because, you know, we're still young, but, you know, obviously...
We're old compared to our kids.
Right. So with the kids, I'm just like, oh, okay. Oh, you got to figure, okay, go do it then. Like, there's got to be a point where you just stop talking and you're like, all right, well, we'll let life teach you. And shoot, maybe you do know something I don't know. We'll see in a very short period of time. So, I mean, I just think that, you know, it's all part of the growing up process, you know, like... If people understood what was going on in the interim, I think there'd be a lot less conflicts. Like, you know, I'm dealing with this other situation where the other person was below the other person and now they're the same and the other person doesn't want to, you know, accept that. So one of them has to kind of, you kind of have to initiate like a false conflict even though there's no real conflict. But you kind of initiate one so that you can make that separation. And so like a lot of times that's what's happening is like, oh, like I want to live like this particular way, but you're saying this other thing, so I'm going to initiate this crazy conflict so that I can separate from you. So it happens. I remember when I was listening one time to this preacher, and you ever heard that old miserable guy on the radio? He sounds real. He's been dead for quite some time. Very stodgy, very miserable, but he's got some very practical whatever.
No, I don't listen to miserable people. I like Jordan Peterson is calming to me. I don't want to listen to someone that sounds miserable.
Well, I mean, he's not. But again, he's a much older guy. Like I said, he's been with the A&So for quite some time. But he was talking about, you know, he's just like an old school guy, and the broadcasts were from the '60s, so he still says stuff like coloreds and blah blah blah.
No.
And like he was talking about how this woman, their kid was just, you know, whatever, and he goes, well, how old is he? And she's like, well, he's 16 and he won't listen. And he's like, well, just let him go. She's like, of course he's going to say it's about to be a man. Of course, this is the 60s. So I guess you were much closer to being a man at 16 back in the 60s as now. I mean, God, they're like
I honestly
an 11-year-old.
wish we were back in that time. Like
you'd be like an 11-year-old now. But yeah, so he was talking about how he's like, you know, young people, like, they kind of have to do that. They'll figure it out, and you know, sometimes it's time to just let them go. So I mean, I'm watching this song, and it was, you know, it starts out, the young are immoral, the old are all wise. It's like she obviously does not believe that, and then she's saying, I hope to outlive beauty and grace, left with only a human waste, discussing matters of our place. You know, praying to stand degrading a heartland dollhouse. Castles line our eyes, lost in our minds. You know, like...
Memories?
Well, it just seems to me like young people, like, you know, you have these ideals, or like you'll say like, oh, I'm gonna make my own way, and I'm gonna have my own thing. And you see all these things that older people have accumulated, but that's because they've been working all their life. So castles line our eyes, lost in our minds. It's like you have this like sort of pipe dream that you're going to have that stuff too. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Plastering each and every finger inside out, building a stage for hollow plays, and in reality, it's all hollow, right? So like you've got these castles, and I'm interpreting it as the older generation like accumulated enough wealth to get a castle, and then you're being told that that's your goal. Your goal is to build your own castle, but here she's saying, yeah, but it's hollow. Like once you get it, you realize how hollow it is if that's how you're angling your life.
Yeah.
You know, so I think to me it looks like it's like, you know, you lived a hollow life and you're trying to pass it on to me, and when I reject it, you're saying, "Oh, it's because you're young." It's like, no, it's because I don't want to have a hollow life at the end of my days. Forgiving ourselves in one great epilogue. That is this is pathetic dialogue. I love that line.
Oh, I know. That made me laugh when she said that part.
Why?
Well, no, because she's been saying all of this stuff, and then she's saying, like, it's one great... An epilogue is like a story, right?
No, an epilogue is the end of the story. It's like how you summarize everything at the end.
Okay, well, I thought it was the whole story.
Yeah.
Ourselves in one great... Okay. But then she said... It just struck me as funny because she said, this is a pathetic dialogue. It sounded like all this talking that she'd been doing through the whole thing, she was, like, saying was a pathetic dialogue, but maybe I misunderstood her. Yeah. Because at the end, she ends up saying, dialogue has turned into my epilogue. I apologize for nothing.
Yeah, like, it's the end of the story. Like, to me, she's saying that the dialogue is meaningless because now it's turned into an epilogue. Like, I've got nothing else to say to you. Like, it's over. Mm-hmm. But, of course, for some reason, I thought at the end she said that the dialogue had turned to a monologue. And she apologized for nothing. Because she was the only one talking through the whole thing, so I guess I just missed on that. No, this girl can write her ass off if she's the one that wrote it. Shadows fed to Tyrants. So here is the crux of the song right here. Where masks are skin-sewn shadows fed to tyrants. The noise of drums beats down our existence to nothing. These bastards are forced to grin and bear it. We're all cursed with ease. So, I think what she's saying is, and again, I'm locating it in 2010, Tyrants, you know, Mr. Bush. No, Mr. Bush wasn't the president in 2010. That was Mr. Obama, wasn't it? Obama was 2008. Was it? Yeah, Obama was 2008. So Bush was already gone for 2 years. So, it seems to me she's saying, like, the older generation's like, yeah, you're sitting here telling us, guiding us, yada, 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 and you're the ones that are sending us into wars all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, where masks are skin-sewn shadows fed to tyrants. Yikes. So the name of the song is Shadows Fed to Tyrants. Yep. And, like, people, you know, like, you... And it's true. I mean, it's literally called de-individuation when you go into these... military, you know, when they, you know, Marine Corps or, you know, Navy, whatever it is, it's like they make the training the way that it is in order to de-individuate you, to take away all aspects of your, like, you don't see, like, army guys, like regular big army guys walking around with their own expression or whatever. They're all... Yeah, yeah. And you have to be that way because in order to get, you know, 200,000 people going in the same direction, killing the right people and not killing the wrong people, you kind of have to, you can't be yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, if you want to be yourself, then you have to join, you know, and it's kind of funny, like you join other groups and it's like, oh, you get to wear your sleeves or you get to grow out your hair and people think, oh, I've escaped the de-individuation. And it's like, yeah, but all you soft guys look exactly the same. So it's all, you know, you don't really get it, you know, until you're out and you go, wait a second, you know, because it's like, oh yeah, man, we're not like that. Or even if you're like, you know, working parallel with some of these groups, it's like, oh, we're not like them. We don't have their rules. Yeah, but you all still look the same. Matter of fact, you're probably more de-individuated in those groups than you are in Big Army, because at least in Big Army you know that this is not really me. This is a version of me. Whereas a lot of those soft guys really believe that, you know, they're thinking for themselves and they're acting for themselves, and you know. This is not going to be popular to say on this type of channel, but I remember, like, whenever I would see, like, people dress like, you know, like the way to dress like metal. Yeah. When people would dress like that, I was like, oh, that's like cool. I wasn't allowed to do that, obviously, growing up in the strict home that I did. But, like, now I realize that, like, that's a whole, like, those people to me looked like they were stepping out and they were, like, doing their own thing. Yeah. But now I realize, wait, no, they're a whole group and they all look the same. Yeah, everybody looks the same. Yeah. Yeah. So it's the same thing, like, with music. So it's like, but the point is, I'm taking this as... Masks are skin-sewn shadows fed to tyrants. Like, you took all these people, all these young people, because it's always young people who actually go to jihad. It's the old people that can't get along, and then they send their sons to go do jihad. So and like these people are just being fed. It's it's kind of like the tyrants are just eating these kids. Which is really what warfare is, I remember, reading hardcore history and all those German kids and there's all this, and they were just slaughter. It was just a complete slaughterhouse. And they lost 15,000 kids in 2 days or something like that. And when I say kids, I'm talking 16, 17-year-old kids.
Sickening.
So that these kids are just being, they're de-individuated. They have to wear masks and they're shadows of themselves. Once they get out, and then their bodies basically get fed to tyrants. The noise of drums beats down our existence to nothing. Which I took as one of those parades or whatever. And it. All the propaganda that happens, Trump had this march and there were tanks and stuff like all the propaganda. So the noise of drums beats down our existence to nothing. And then it's these bastards.
Hold on. I don't know what Bleeding Heartland is. Why it kept saying Bleeding Heartland a couple times.
Well,
what is this Heartland? Is Heartland where you live or where you're going?
So the Heartland is it's supposed to be.
The only thing I know of Heartland is it was a restaurant where I grew up. It was very good.
It's supposed to be Middle America. So Middle America is the Heartland. That
it's
good
called.
old. Yeah, it's called the Heartland. It's the heart of America. It's it's the pinnacle of the good American, the yes ma'am, no ma'am. And then of course a bleeding heart is what now they call them snowflakes, but the insults that right-wingers had prior to snowflake was bleeding heart. Oh, you're a bleeding heart liberal. You feel bad about everything. So Bleeding Heartland is a pretty intelligent double entendre because people in the Heartland are generally not bleeding hearts. Bleeding hearts are usually in New York and California.
Yep.
Right? And then so you had New York on the East Coast, you had Cali on the West Coast. But the heart of America was in the middle, and wholesome, good, people who, whatever. Basically the Republican ideal. When your parents think about the best of America, that's what they're thinking about. And you're not really thinking about a lot of diversity and a lot of gay stuff. They're just thinking about just good old, while the coasts can battle it out, we're the real heartland of America. And that's where you get most of your that's where most of your American jihadists come from.
The Heartland?
Oh, 10 to 1. They're all
really?
They're all hunting.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I say with these Antifa people, they don't know what they're dealing with. They're dealing with people who've been shooting since they've been, 4 or 5 years old. You know what I mean? Yeah. You don't want no smoke with those people, man. And I've seen it firsthand. These guys call out they call out blindfolded. They do pew 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 pew. It's okay, all right. So. That's the Heartland, and that's where all these kids are. But then she calls it the Bleeding Heartland.
Yeah.
Because those are the ones that are dying.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, again, if you're a bleeding heart liberal, you're somebody who cares about race issues. You care about, LGBT issues. And so you get called a bleeding heart. So to call it the Bleeding Heartland is brilliant.
Yeah.
And then,
do you think it could have anything to do, too, with, the mothers? If you say, you have, a bleeding heart, it's, a really sad and sorrowful, sort of, I'm not sure, I don't know if, with the moms, with their kids going and dying and all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I knew what she was doing with Bleeding Heartland. I thought that was pretty brilliant. And then she says, these bastards are forced to grin and bear it, and we're all cursed with ease.
Wow.
So it's they're out there suffering, but they got to act oh yeah, America. And then she says we're all cursed with ease, meaning we're so fine with everything that it's very, very hard to agitate. It's very hard. See, that's the thing about Antifa that bothers me is that it's extremely difficult to agitate people to get them to act on something publicly. The work we do with abortion, you get a lot of people that'd be yeah, that sucks, but, very few people have ever actually gone out on the street and agitated and created a public conflict where the dialogue became necessary. So then you have a group like Antifa, because I agree with this line, we're cursed with ease. So you got a group like Antifa, and they're out there, they're agitating, and they just, to me, if they just burned a bunch of American flags, and people attacked them for that, because people absolutely would attack them, and they fought back, I'd say, okay, I mean, that's okay, but that's not what they're doing. And the biggest thing for me with Antifa is, like, to me it seems like they're wasting an opportunity to really do something significant over a long period of time. But by the protests and the agitation that they do, but then they lose it all when you go and attack old people. And then they got you on camera beating up you being the initiator of violence, and then the whole movement gets wasted. And that's people
your
like
voice is no longer heard.
Right, like that's my big thing with Antifa, is just a waste. You're wasting you've got a moment. It's the social media world. They obviously know how to manipulate social media. Great, stage a massive flag burning. Like, I would hate it. It would make me extremely infuriated, but they have the right to do that. And so there's lots of things that you can do to get people out of the ease that is America. And of course, the quandary is always, when you're around guys who make certain career decisions, they say, look, I'm doing X, Y, and Z over here so people won't have to deal with it in Manhattan. So you enter into armed conflict so as to give people that type of ease. But at the same time, if the older generation keeps bringing us into conflicts, this type of ease now becomes a curse.
Right.
Because the people at home are supposed to say, that's not a good reason to send this guy off to die or to kill. And I don't know, to this moment, which one is worse. Because both of them are life sentences. So it's like, that's how it's supposed to work. It's people on the street are supposed to be advocating for the people that are fighting, and the people that are fighting are supposed to say, look, it's like Luttrell said, like, do whatever you got to do, negotiate, do whatever, but if you send me over there, we're going to stack bodies. So, like, this part right here is the way that the public and the military is supposed to work with each other. It's like the military is supposed to fight for the public and make sure that the public can have free speech, and then the public is supposed to use that free speech to ensure that they don't have to do that at any point in their career. Like, that's the way it's supposed to work. But what's happened is we've said, oh, we got guys out there fighting. Oh, okay, so now I can have free speech. Well, I'm just going to use free speech, and I'm not going to go advocate for the guys that are out there. Everybody kind of sucks, because she doesn't let the young people off the hook. She said, we're all cursed with ease. This pathetic, and then she says, this pathetic dialogue has turned into my epilogue. So she doesn't let young people off the hook, but, it's clear that most of the blame lands with the older generation in her mind, and she says she apologizes for nothing. And of course, I am the same. Like, I generally don't believe that blame gets handed out evenly in a given situation. Somebody's usually more at fault than the other, and it usually has to do with your responsibility. So if you're the older generation, like, you're responsible to kind of like give that guidance. And obviously in America, I don't think as a whole we've been given that guidance. Now the response is, well, you kids, technology has taken off to such a degree that you guys won't listen to the older people, and I think that there's some truth to that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, all these supposed young people who had no respect for old people, what were they doing last election? They all wanted Bernie Sanders. What does that tell you? Think about that. You can say, oh, young people, they don't have any care or respect for old people.
But you're right, they were all wanting Bernie.
Hello? All of us were asking for Bernie. He's the oldest person on the ticket.
Right.
Nobody, like Marco Rubio, nobody cared about him. I can't even name the other people that ran for president on the DNC side last term, but I know that Bernie was the oldest. So, and I do think that his age had something to do with it for young people. I think that actually appealed to young people.
I don't think that was a negative for him.
Think about it. Obama, what was his shtick? Like, I'm this young, powerful, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the old generation voted for the older guy. I mean, the younger guy.
Trump is old.
Yeah, but you don't get a lot of younger generation folks that are pro-Trump. At least not in our community. There's not a lot of pro-Trump. Yeah. You know, whatever.
No, you're right.
But like Obama was like this young, dashing. You know, he had some juice. You know, he had some sauce. You know, he was. You know, and then you figure that the young people would have to get like. You know, you would have to prop up another candidate that was like him. Yeah. And Bernie's like, phew, like not the opposite politically, although there are a lot of things that, in my mind, are much more humanitarian on the Bernie side than on the Obama side, obviously. But so I think, you know, among young people, there's still that deep desire for guidance. Yeah. And I think that Bernie displays that, obviously. Yes. Like, obviously. If young people were just, screw those old people. Yeah. It's just that we want an old person we can trust. And so when you got a guy like Bernie who's been saying the same thing for 40 years, you know, it kind of, and has actually done time for being on the right side of the civil rights movement, which literally almost none of our other politicians were. Then yeah, it's like, okay, well, we'll follow that old guy because he's not going to be a tyrant now. Unfortunately, the big homie Bernie is having some issues because it's very ironic that his staff, they're quitting because they're not getting paid $15 an hour because they're working 60 days a week and they're only getting 36 a year, which, you know, it turns out to like 13 an hour or something like that. But So he's not as popular now as he was, you know, 4 years ago. You know, so now it's, you know, Tulsi and all the rest of it. But anyway, that's a completely separate subject. My point is that this to me is about the generation gap between old and young, and the distrust that old people have, that young people have of old people, and the being tired, you know, getting judged by the older generation. And her saying, you know, I don't want any part of it, you know. And if you look at the rest of the songs, foul revolt, cruel policy, justify the suffering. Look, flood the earth. Flood the earth. You know, like, so it just seems, this record seems to be about, like, not, you know, just the world, just trying to interpret the world around you and realizing that, you know, you've been led astray by this older group and you're no longer just going to take what they have to say at face value. They're going to have to, as Noam Chomsky says, justify their authority. And I think that that's brilliant. I think that concept of justification of authority is brilliant. And I think it needs to be, you know, practiced. You know?
I think that a lot of times, like, you want the older generation to kind of, like you said, give some guidance and stuff like that. But you don't want it to be like the cliches or the lines that people say, you know, like, you want it to be something real. Like, have you really sat down and, like, do you, like, as an older person, does the older person know themselves? Do they know why they made certain decisions in their life? And then they can give you guidance from, like, their personal experience, not from just, like, I don't know, sometimes
just
the lines...
just based on I'm older, so I'm right.
Older, and here's your, like, cookie-cutter answer to fix your problem. Like, well, everybody's different, and even the experiences, like, you know, for me, it's not, like, the politically stuff, but, like, you know, just like mom stuff, like to be able to talk to like an older mom, or, you know, somebody who had a bunch of kids, or somebody that was in an interracial relationship with kids, you know, like all these different things. There's so many angles that, like, you want the older to be able to speak to the younger and, like, give them guidance and help you, you know, move on into the future. But, you know, it feels like, well, the older people that surround us, that it's not I don't feel like they take that seriously. You know what I mean? Like, and then you kind of think to yourself, are they like me, only just older? Like, do they still feel like they haven't figured it out? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think the older people around us would probably say that, you know, it's extremely difficult to meet and speak the same language because the gap is so, you know, far. Yeah. You know, like when I was a kid, my mom would be like, "All right, Vincent, show me what with Nintendo." You know, and so it was just an 8-bit Mario game. So she'd sit by me and I'd say, you got to jump over this thing here. And so it wasn't hard to relate to your kids or to the generation before you, because it was just, oh, I could get down with Mario. But now it's like YouTube and selfies and Instagram and Twitter and Technorati and you know, these older, they're like, man, I barely can handle my phone. So I think there's like an intimidation factor. And the other side of it is like, before, there are certain rules about how to deal with older people. You know, just in general. And
like
you still see it in the South. Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But up in the Northeast, forget it. Like, there's no, like, respect whatsoever. So, like, it doesn't give them that feeling that they have something to offer because they don't know anything. You know, like, that's of immediate consequence to a younger person. And the second thing is that they're not being treated with that sort of reverence that kind of invites them to speak into your life. You know what I mean?
See that.
So, I think our generation is going to be different for the next generation because, you know, I just don't see us being completely out of touch the way that these guys are. Just because we're hitting a point with technology where like you won't be able to survive, you know, in the next generation. You know, like you could still have one of those phones with the weird cord on it, you know, and still kind of make it. But, you know, the next iteration of everything, like, you're not going to be able to do that. So this is like the last generation of people being able to, like, kind of hold on and do things the way they wanted to do it. The next generation, forget it. Like, you're not going to be able to function.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, good song. What do you give it?
Oh, it was... First of all, I didn't really like it, and then I was like... Then I realized that it was a girl doing the vocals. So I was like, oh, well, that should get more points. That's
gonna give it some points.
Yeah, because I didn't know until I, like, saw it. But I still wasn't a very big fan of the song, so... 7.3?
Yeah,
7?
The name of the song is called the name of the record is Landmine Marathon, so it's definitely got to be some sort of war. That's an 8 for me. It's an 8, mostly because of the lyrics. Yeah, mostly for the lyrics. I mean, and that's pretty much... Actually, no, Landmine Marathon is actually the name of the band. Sorry, not the record. The name of the record is Sovereign Descent, I think, is the name of the record. Yeah, so it's an 8 for me. So, shout out to Zonia. Vin out.
Sorry out.
Gone.